if life is a simulation, a dream, if it's illusory by nature, then who are these other people? Well, other people, well, some people I made as you know, maybe, I made a video about simulation, about life being illusory. That bring us some interesting questions in the commentaries, which were on the line of, yeah, you say that the life is illusory, just try to step in front of a train. Or many obvious, clear, materialistic points, like if life is an illusion, if you were in front of me, I will kick your ass and you will see how this is an illusion. And if it would be so, I wouldn't need to do a lot of things. Well, that's one point. And the other point was what my friend James asked me, that if our brain is creating our reality, how is it possible that two people see the same thing? Well, that leads us to the point that I want to make, that how you differentiate an awakened person from a deluded person. How do you know if you are just hallucinating on some ridiculous theory you just found on the internet? Or how do you know if you're on the right path, let's say? Well, I can tell you this. An awakened person will treat other people as themselves. And that's how you know you're not deluding yourself. Because the reason why people are afraid of the idea of a simulation or a dream and things like that, if you have talked to your friends or family, you may have realized that some people, it really creeps shit out of them to think of everything being a dream. Is just scary. Suddenly you lose control of everything. And for some people, it may be stimulating. For some people, it's definitely scary. And I think we should be respectful to other people's processes. And we don't need to agree on words. Words are meaningless. So this whole point of a simulation or a dream is still just words. So how you show that to your friend and to your family? Well, you're nice to them when they are not nice to you. Yes. That's how you can pinpoint an awakened person. That's the part that you have to take as a dream. You don't have to take your life as a dream in the sense of not going to work anymore, not caring about your body anymore. No. It's not supposed to mean like that. That is just, let's just be practical. What it takes real courage. Real courage. So you will know if someone is really living in a fantasy, illusory theory in their minds that life is a simulation or a dream, and who's actually awakened. It's because someone who's awakened wouldn't take experiences personally. Meaning, if someone comes to you and says something horrible and unfair, or does something horrible and unfair, an awakened person, it's not that they wouldn't react to the situation. If it's a dangerous situation, they're coming for you or for someone you love, yeah, we'll just do whatever to do to defend the people you love. Not necessarily by attacking back, but, just by doing the common sense, practical solution to, let's say, a violent situation. It's not that you think, oh, this is a dream, so people are doing horrible things and there is violence around me and I just don't do anything because it's a dream. Well, no, that's not what it meant. On the contrary, it means that you take responsibility of everything you perceive, which is too much responsibility, and it makes sense how we take a long time to process this idea, because it takes an incredible amount of courage to forgive. It takes an incredible amount of courage to someone be beating you and you still realizing this is not the truth. That's the moment where you bring about all this simulation thing, when people are being mean to you, when you are apparently in danger. That's the moment you just realize that, let me take back the danger things. I'm seeing the comments going back. Let's focus on other people. You want to know if you're awakened? Well, you will know by the way you care about other people, around people. You see all these scandals of people in spirituality, why people don't trust gurus, because there's a long history of all these people abusing their students or their pupils. Well, yeah, that is right. That shouldn't happen at all, ever. A good person is a good person, regardless of what you consider to be good or bad. It is obvious. And it takes a lot of courage to be fearless enough to be forgiving, in the moment where you feel offended. Imagine that someone comes to you and says something hard when you keep this conversation in your head when this person said this mean thing to you, an unfair thing to you, and you're just like, and maybe the situation is gone long time already, but still we keep all this kind of suffering or this. Well, that cannot happen if you actually do think life is a simulation or it's a dream. I think dream is a closer analogy. It's not the truth, but it's a closer analogy than a simulation. Simulation implies that some sort of computer is simulating it. I think it's a bit more complex than that. I would say that every particle of our experience is intelligent. So it's not like there's an isolated software and there are isolated avatars where, yeah, well, that may be useful sometimes to understand some things, but it's still very far from what's happening. You can still delude yourself by thinking that life is not real. So let me say in a different way. Okay, you would say, that means that my experience of living this and that, is that real? I would say probably not in the way you think it is, but what is really real, if you want me to suggest you one way to know reality, besides meditation, of course, it is to love. And loving other people, as you probably know, is more difficult than it seems. And that's when you know you're on the right path. And when someone comes at you and does something that is apparently unfair, you show that you're actually awakened when you feel empathy and incredible amount of compassion for these other people. That's the signature. I've been lucky enough to be around masters, people who I would say they are very advanced people. And this is actually, if you ask me what is the characteristics of all these people, were they this, they were like that, were they nice, did they talk a lot, or were they silent, did they move, they were energetic and looking for experiences, or they were just like passive like a rock? Well, that's just personality, doesn't matter. But what I can tell you that is a common denominator of awakened people, it is how they treat other people. Because you are just really making use of this analogy of the dream or the simulation when you use it to be free. And you do that when you release yourself from the burden, from the limitation of thinking that you are who you think you are. I don't know if that sounded a bit complicated. I don't know you're following me. What I mean by that is that we live trapped in our minds. That's the main point. And we think we are something that we are not. How you figure out? Just stop paying so much attention to what your mind is telling you. And your mind is just trying to define reality and judging. But the hottest spot in your whole experience is other people. Other people are the number one source of what we call our suffering. Because that could be, okay, there are a little bit of exceptions, of course, but if you just make like a statistic research on where does your suffering comes from, you realize that it is much biggest part of it is about your relationship with other people. So you want to take the simulation and the dream into real practice, start from there. Don't start thinking like a stone person, like, oh, this is not real. Wow, how cool. Then nothing matters. Well, that's better than being a fanatic, religious fanatic. But still, you can still treat other people like they're worth nothing. And that's not right. That's just not understanding. So going around talking about the irreality of our experience doesn't make any sense if you're not treating yourself as part of the illusion. And by yourself, I mean the name, the person you think you are, your history, everything that is not the spontaneous awareness of this moment, your experience of aliveness right now. Anything else, any thought you could have about yourself, you could define yourself, oh, I'm this kind of person, I'm that kind of person, this happened to me. And all that is just thoughts. This is not you. We just think it's ourselves. So that's another way of going about it. That's the way you apply the simulation, dream, illusory reality. It's just not thinking. Just don't need to think. You don't need to believe about this life is dream. You don't even need to understand it. Maybe that's a good point. You just need to live it. How you live it? Just by connecting with what is. And you get, by doing that honestly and long enough, you will start noticing that you get in some sort of communion with the people you meet, with the people you interact. And of course, there will be these imbalances in your relationships, but if you really are honestly looking for the truth, for figuring out and letting go of this illusory part of your life, I would say, start putting 80% of your effort on relationships, on your day-to-day relationships. And notice how many times you react from a position that you believe yourself to be real and you believe the other person to be real as characters. So that's how you use the simulation and the dream and the illusory quality of our experience. How do you bring that into something real? And it's coming to my head just to finish this video. You know, last century we had, I would say, a great example of human being living as close as the truth that you could, expressing it with their own characteristics. But I think one of the greatest teachers we had in the recent history is Ramana Maharshi. And he was living, by the end of his life, he was living like a saint everywhere. Everybody was taking care of him like a very important person. And you know what were his last words before dying? He wasn't thinking about his legacy or saying the last meaningful words of a master who is enlightened and just shows and shares knowledge and philosophical important things. You know, the only thing he said, the last thing he said is, did anyone feed the bird? Because there was a bird that was coming regularly to get fed. And I think that's a symbolic great pointer. If you at any time start considering yourself to be awakened, or you want to see to which extent you're awakened to the illusory reality of this world and all these things, to which extent you get it, I would say, honestly, revise your attitude towards other people. And of course, try to be nice. And if you do, and if you try that, you will realize that it's the hardest thing. It's the hardest task from all of them. And that's because this is the closer to reality. Because love loving others, loving everything and everyone, is the closest experience we have in this dream from reality. Actually, when you start guessing, you start waking up, that's what happens. We call it love. We call it appreciation. Start just spurring in your life spontaneously from nowhere to anywhere, just there. And of course, it changes your behavior and it changes your mind. It relaxes your mind. It's like, it's okay, it's okay. These people said this and this. Yeah, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. Honor love. Honor other people. Look at their eyes and see how their eyes are mirrors. Not to your character, but to the presence that you really are. And in this connection, in the presence between two people, the whole world renders illusory and only love exists. And you can finally rest. And you know everything's gonna be okay always, because you're so fascinated with everything and everyone, and you look for the opportunities and the difficulties too. You're not looking just for a comfortable life. You're just open. You're learning. You're just embracing everything with your heart, treating everything and everyone as yourself. That's the actual meaning of life. It's a dream.